the primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
AI is a golden opportunity.
How do we ensure that this technology is regulated?
The long arc of technological history is now in an extraordinary new phase.
The AI 6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
It is Michael O'Kane. It's my absolute pleasure once again this Thursday morning to be joined on the line with Joanne Sweeney from the Digital Training Institute. How are you doing this morning, Joanne?
I'm great. Thanks for having me as always.
Over the years, we've talked a lot about a lot of AI tools, but today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different, which is OpenClaw. So I suppose my first question, Joanne, is just how does OpenClaw differ from some of the previous AI tools we've talked about in the past?
Well, this has been described by people in the AI world as a weekend project that became an open source AI sensation. But for your listeners, if they're using an AI tool like ChatGPT or Copilot, they really are putting a text prompt into that AI model, and then it will give us an answer, or it might design us an image. Yeah. So it's very much reactive to what we do. But OpenClaw is like a personal agent at scale. It can actually do tasks for us. And so we might have talked about agents before in the context of workplaces, but people are using it themselves in their personal lives. And they have had 2 million visitors to the website in a single week.
Wow. And can you give us some examples, Joanne? You mentioned there about you can use it to do tasks for you as opposed to someone like ChatGPT it's basically just a glorified Google search engine. How does this differ? Can you give us some examples?
So let's say that I've got work travel to book. I can talk to it through WhatsApp, for example, so an app that we use dozens of times a day. And I could say, hey, OpenClaw, I've got a work trip coming up to London. Can you please go and search for flights from Shannon Airport? I want to stay in a hotel, which is 5 minutes Westminster, and I need to be there for 3 days. And it will actually not only do the research, give me recommendations, it will complete all of the bookings for me.
Wow.
So you're giving it access to all of your systems. And as you would appreciate, that's a pretty dangerous thing to do.
Pretty dangerous, pretty incredible as well. I know I could be using that to help me organize my flights in this year. What other apps can it can interact with WhatsApp? What other things could it interact with for you?
Well, it can interact with your Slack, with your email. So any of the apps that you have that you work with on a daily basis, maybe your Spotify, once you give it permissions, and that's the whole idea around an agent like that. It is an assistant that does work. So think about how you complete tasks when you log into something or you open an app. It can actually do the same thing, but with your permission. So it just depends what the task is, and you give it the workflow and it will go ahead and complete it. Now, this is what's called an open source AI agent, which means that lots of different developers are adding features to it every time. And every time a developer will add a feature to it, it's listed in a place called GitHub. And so there are thousands of developers who are, in inverted commas, playing with OpenClaw right now and adding lots of features. However, it did get hacked. And this is the warning to your listeners. While it's really exciting and it is a step into a new place of AI for us personally, never mind what we're doing at work, it has the potential to be hacked, and it has been hacked already. It was only launched in November, but the reason that we're talking about it today is that it hit mainstream, and it's hit mainstream headlines. So with every great new piece of technology, we should be wary about the potential dangers.
Absolutely. And that was actually going to be my next question there, Joanne, because you said there at the top of this piece, the kind of main difference between OpenAI or OpenClaw, to something like ChatGPT or whatever, is it's more local to whether it's your phone or your computer. It's actually local to the computer as opposed to something like ChatGPT, which relies on the cloud. And that can create a lot of, we'll say, walking on eggshells when it comes to security and what data it has.
Yeah, because you're downloading the software, as you say, onto your device locally, and it's sitting on something that you trust, that has information that is private and personal to you. And with that, giving it access then to systems within that device, that's giving it a lot of control a lot of power. And then the other word that your listeners need to be aware of is agents look for autonomy. Autonomy means having the ability to take actions on your behalf and potentially outside of your control. Obviously, you'll ask it to stop at some stage, but let's say it gets hacked and another agent comes in and takes over, then that's when you're in serious danger. Just like human hackers would come in, Michael,
Of
in a
course.
scenario and take over a computer. Now we have agents doing it, and we know how smart the agents are.
You use this kind of a scary word there where you mentioned autonomy. Is that something that OpenClaw is able to do currently? Have that autonomy to, let's say, for example, if you wanted it to remind you of things weekly, or maybe it will hurry up those reminders. Is that something that it can currently do?
Yes, absolutely. So it has autonomy based on the workflow and the permissions that you give it. And you see, that's the difference between an assistant and an agent. That is the exact definition. An assistant reacts to a prompt and it acts on our prompt, on our request. An agent is an independent assistant that works autonomously. It is that by default. And that's why this is seen as agentic.
Okay, interesting stuff. Joanne, you mentioned there about how OpenClaw just got hacked. Was it earlier this week or maybe late last week? What was the kind of impact of that, and what was the action taken by, we talked previously about Grok AI and the kind of immediate impact that happened as a result of that. What has happened as a result of the hacking of OpenClaw?
Because this is built open source and you have all of these very shrewd, capable and experienced, they were obviously adding new features. And because there are so many people using it and it's open source, things can get leaked. Okay. And they can then that code and they can run the code, steal credentials, and basically take information from the people that have downloaded it onto their system and even the tools that you have connected OpenCloud to. So again, your email and other systems. And so what other developers will do is they will try and patch up these vulnerabilities to mitigate against future hacks. But with anything in the cloud, on the internet, in AI systems, nothing is not hackable. So while it's an exciting project for developers and for people who are testing it, I wouldn't be jumping onto it anytime soon because I think the risk outweighs any potential reward that I would get. I'd be using maybe other systems that have security layers kind of built into a license that you pay for.
It's a funny thing because we're kind of talking about this a lot, especially in 2026 now, Joanne, about things like Grok AI, OpenClaw, where things go wrong, whether it gets misused by people on the internet, whether it gets hacked. How do we prevent that stuff? How do we protect ourselves from avoiding that in the future? Or, sorry, to avoid being the victim of a hacking like that in the future?
Yeah, well, one way is, decide not to use any open source systems that have not been tested at scale and do not guarantee you any level of security. The second way is to, then the other side of that is to use only AI tools that are licensed and that, you can get an element of comfort that there is security built into it. But then the other side then is because this is new, you're probably going to have regulators looking at it. I mean, we saw how as you mentioned, Grok AI went rogue. These agents and these tools can go rogue, but then you've got legislators and policymakers and politicians maybe coming down heavy and fining them. So we know under the EU AI Act, we are only allowed AI systems that do not cause any danger to civil society, to members of the public, and that they absolutely should have protections built into them. But, this was a weekend project for Peter Steinberger, who's from Austria, who set this up, and it's really taken off.
Absolutely. And I'm sure throughout the year, we're just going to see more and more of these open source AIs just becoming and hitting the market, aren't we?
Absolutely. Agentic AI we spoke about on the show last year.
Yeah.
It is firmly mainstream now. And the other big companies like Meta and XAI and Claude and OpenAI are going to be looking at what Peter Steinberger did and going, okay, and it already has massive user base. This is interesting. So they might be borrowing his ideas and integrating into their own features.
Well, I'm sure we'll be here to update listeners on all those updates happening in the future. Joanne Sweeney from the Digital Training Institute, thank you so much as always for joining me here on Good Morning Dublin for our Thursday digital download. A lot of interesting stuff there about the OpenClaw incident over the weekend, about its hacking and how to protect ourselves. Joanne, I suppose just looking into the future, maybe not specifically at OpenAI, but looking into the future, because we're going to be seeing more, like you mentioned at the top of the year, one of the things you're hoping to see in 2026 are these kind of AI assistants. What do you think the future looks like, maybe not specifically for OpenClaw, but for these kind of AI assistant, these bots online?
Well, I think that you're going to have like maybe conversational assistants where we can actually talk to our assistants and they talk back to us and they can read our calendar, tell us what's on our to-do list and even help us plan for our meetings. So, I think that the more usage that we as members of the public have around these systems, then they're going to become more available to us and more advanced because the technology is advancing every single day. I'm training people every week, and every time I go into a training room, there's something new to say, such as the speed. So, it's interesting, and we are the product and we are the users. The more we use it, the more access and functionality and capability the companies are going to give us because they want to build our trust. And when they build our trust, they build a user base, and then they build a bigger business and a pipeline of customers who are paying for licenses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately for OpenClaw, it doesn't look like they're going to have to regain that trust in order to be part of that conversation in the future. Joanne Sweeney, thank you so much, as always, for joining me here on our Thursday digital download. For any of the listeners who want to connect with you, listen to your podcast, purchase your book, where can they go to connect with you?
Go to digitaltraininginstitute.ie and do absolutely check out AI6 podcast wherever you get your podcast.